An organization is said to be ambidextrous if it engages in both exploration and exploitation in the context of product development. Here, exploitation refers to seeking incremental improvements in a product so as better to satisfy the customers. Exploration, on the other hand, refers to the search for entirely new products serving new markets. Should firms be ambidextrous, or should they stick to their knitting and focus on either exploration or exploitation, one or the other? If ambidexterity is the way to go, with what balance? How should exploration and exploitation be mixed? These and related questions hold considerable interest for organizational researchers as well as for decision makers within organizations. The purpose of this video is to introduce and demonstrate an agent-based model. This model can be used for exploring ambidexterity strategies that might be used by an organization. The model itself, including source code and documentation, is available at the URL shown. There are 7 basic strategies built into the model. In what follows, we see them in action, paired up for purposes of comparison. In our first example, we have 120 customers and 2 producers. Each of the 2 producers is using strategy A. That is, they are not making any investments whatsoever in the improvement of their product. So we'll see what happens by looking at a run of this, a simple single run of this situation in the NetLogo Ambidexterity Strategy Explorer. What's going on now is a single run in which we have 2 firms, 2 producers, each adhering to the no investment strategy. Each firm takes the money from its customers, its sales, makes a little bit of a profit, and just accepts the money and increments their retained earnings. They do not make any investments in improving the product, either incrementally or radically. And we see, as expected, that they get about the same amount of retained earnings. Firm 2, producer 2, is going to do a little bit better than producer 1, and in the end, producer 2 gets about 80,000 units of retained earnings, and producer 1 about 70,000, and the difference is just due to sampling error. Next up, we play strategy A versus strategy B. Strategy A is, as before, the no investment strategy. That's played by firm 0, producer 0 in this video. And this guy, as usual, just does business and takes all the profits and accumulates them into retained earnings. Strategy B is played by firm 1 in red, as we'll see on the video. And this guy invests in incremental investments, in incremental R&D projects, which may or may not be successful, and he has to pay some money to invest in these guys, and that will come out of retained earnings. On the other hand, what he does with it, if the investment in the project is successful, is that he can improve the value of the product offering by a small amount that's specified in the program. And this allows the product to become more attractive to the customers. They start to switch at a certain rate their focal strategies over to this guy, and they start to buy more from him. But the question is whether it's going to be worth it. This guy will gain customers, but will it net out positively for him? So let's see what happens. This is the program's interface as we're about to start a run, and we see here that firm 0 uses no investment strategy. The strategy of firm 1 is max incremental investment limited that is by budget and number of projects you can have, and also that the locus of incremental improvement for firm 1 is now value instead of cost. So let's see what happens. Well, here we go. The system is running. We see that the gray guy in the returned earnings, which is producer 0, who is not investing. He's just taking the money and accumulating it into retained earnings. Is doing much better. But now he's starting to flatten off here. And the red guy, producer 1, who has been investing, now these investments are paying off because he has almost 80, now over 80, about 80 customers, as opposed to about 40 for the for firm 0. And so his customers, the customers in the market, are starting to move over to this guy, producer 1, because of greater value. And you know, there he goes to gain some profit. However, it takes some time, and we have to worry about that, don't we? Next, we're going to look at strategy A, the usual no investment strategy by our producer 0, versus strategy C by producer 1. Strategy C is like strategy B, that is, it maximally invests in incremental R&D projects. But now when the projects pay off, instead of, as in B, instead of improving the value of the product, the company has invested in projects that do not change the value of the product to the customer, but simply reduce the cost to themselves of manufacturing and supplying the product. So this is the cost option from the producer's point of view, and let's see what happens. Well, the system is running. We see that the producer 1, sorry, in red here has just overtaken producer 0. So producer 1's decision to invest in incremental projects and to take the benefits of these projects when successful has paid off because producer 1 has reduced the cost to himself of manufacturing and providing this product. So the producer has gained all the benefits, not the customers. And we see on top with focal suppliers, we see producer 1 in red is somewhat above producer 0 in gray, but it's really a random kind of thing. And the important lesson here is that producer 1 is going to make more money and make it very quickly. So the benefits, the payback to the producer with investing for cost reduction and then taking all the money has been much faster and much more impressive, really, than what he did in the previous video, where he invested in improving the value of the product to the customers and thereby gained customers. So here, producer 1 makes investments, does not gain new customers, does not improve the value of his product, but reduces the cost of providing it and ends up making a lot more money. Strategy A is as it was, no investment. Strategy D is for radical investment, that is, radically entrepreneurial new kinds of products. And so now producer 1 will invest in radical R&D projects, and these cost more, they take longer to culminate, and they have a smaller chance of success. But if they succeed, then a new product is introduced into the market, and the firm that introduces it will have at least a temporary monopoly. Here it will be permanent, since the only other producer is not going to find it because it's not looking. So we'll see what happens, and does it pay off? And you know, here we go. So we see at the start that the two firms are pretty much the same because there's no investment by firm 1 rather, in red, because it doesn't have enough capital. It has to accumulate capital from its retained earnings in order to make an investment. And then it does, and we saw it you know, lost some retained earnings for a while and then shot up. So this guy was very lucky, actually. It's an atypical run in that it found a productive, successful new product rather quickly, and now it basically clobbers the firm that did not look for it and did not invest. Strategy E is less interesting because it focuses on value, and it's not going to perform all that well. It's not terrible, but in the interest of time and space and the considerations of YouTube, I'm not going to show it. Strategy F is just like strategy E. That is, it's a combination of max incremental investment and radical investment, also limited by the available resources, and preferentially radical. These resources having to be collected from retained earnings. The difference is, in E, the improvement is in value for incremental successes, and in F, the improvement is in cost to the producer from when incremental investments are successful. So now let's see what happens. So here we see them running. We see producer 1 is suffering on retained earnings because he's investing as much as he can in R&D. But then he gets an incremental success, and he pumps up and gets more money, and then finds a very successful radical investment, and is able to clobber the other guy, at least in regard to retained earnings. The important thing to note here is, why is this guy successful as opposed to the E guy that we just saw? Different runs will be different, but the key point here is that by investing in the cost, the producer is going to get more retained earnings, which he can use for investment in radical R&D projects. So by saving money more effectively from his sales that are benefited from the incremental improvements, these are used to fund radical R&D, which in this case leads to a nice success. G is our final strategy, at least in this video. Strategies E and F are said to be ambidexterity strategies because the firm that uses them invests both in incremental and in radical or exploratory projects, R&D projects. Now, but it does that at the same time. Now, the G strategy, the firm adopting it, invests both in incremental and in radical projects, but does it sequentially. So it does it, as the slide says here, it'll invest incrementally for 50 episodes, followed by 50 periods of radical investment. That is, during these 50 periods, it'll invest if it has the money to do so. And we'll play it against the usual A strategy of no investment. We'll see now what happens. So here we go. We see that the run looks pretty much like the AF run, at least at the beginning, when the investor in the sequential strategy doesn't have enough money to do larger investments. But here we see that it's kind of keeping track a bit and making these small investments, and once in a while it gets enough money to make a big investment, and you see the big drop in retained earnings. And then here at the end, it's going up again because of its incremental investments are paying off. So although it's invested in some big-time exploratory projects, they haven't succeeded. Nevertheless, on balance, it's done better than the strategy of not investing at all.